The capital planning meeting to order. We've got 3 basic topics for tonight, some additional DPW projects, some IT related capital expenses, and the recreation department. So those are additional capital items that that need to be funded. We have here the capital projects that are being funded through the budget at this point. Just waiting for Adam to come back.
This will give you a clearer idea. It's where so you can see where it's coming out of, and you can see with the ambulance, the 70,000 of free cash being utilized, the debt of 245,000 over 5 years. See that, Mike, on right here.
So, did that go over? What was our instructions from Carter?
He said 56 originally, but I think Selectman Morrison and Carter had a discussion, and remember he said there was a little bit extra that he had that he could utilize for capital this year that he wasn't expecting.
Right, but when we made our recommendations,
It was 56, I believe, off the top of my head.
because we recommended more than $56,000 worth of
No, for the
capital projects, so what
no
was
for the
our?
56 put down for the ambulance.
Right,
And
Per year.
yeah, and here you see 70 because it turned out there was a little bit more he could put towards it to keep that debt down. He wanted to really make sure that it was where the town can sustain it.
so we're taking 616,750 out of free cash.
Mhm.
And 94,000 out of grants.
So how is that number different? They increased the budget by 200, 150, 175,000. We had a budget of 450, right?
Mhm.
Why is it 616?
It turns out that there was more that he could utilize towards capital. So you'll see more items there, as opposed to coming out of the operating budget.
Mm-hmm.
A lot got moved to capital for one-time expenditures through free cash, the overlay, grants, and the like.
All right,
So we
so,
basically came up with 150K more out of free cash plus this 95,000 out of grants.
Correct.
so in those scenarios, instead of adding on other things, why not go to our recommendation? I mean, if he's recommending not to get the generator for the police station,
Mhm.
why not?
Because there's a potential other source.
Okay.
So the legislature has a bill on the table for an additional 250,000 for the police station. So if that bill makes
Okay.
it through the House and the Senate and the governor signs it, then we'll get that money and the generator will come out of that. So that allows us to do more capital things.
All right, so, I mean, what are we doing?
And there were some things also that came up with DPW, with the MS4, other items that were needed that happened after Bob presented to the capital planning committee as well. I can tell you, we really went through the
That's
list.
the, is that
and
the
everything.
wastewater? MS4 is?
The MS4 is the stormwater.
Yeah.
And it's the regulations. There's a small part of Templeton that is urbanized that has to
Mhm.
comply with
Yep.
the federal regulations. And we filed a notice of intent, and by, I believe it's summer, we have to go put in for further regulations and compliance with the MS4. And Bob put that in for in his budget, but it was moved to capital. For I think the initial request was 30,000, but Bob feels comfortable because after speaking with the town administrator's office
Mhm.
or selectman's office, 22.5 was the final recommendation that he feels he could do with the plan that has to be submitted. It's a very technical plan that you really need to go have a consultant do the stormwater management plan. It's something that can't be done in-house. Oh, and I have some backup paperwork for that, actually. Did you want to see it, or I could give you one, give Mike
Thanks.
one, and then you could just swap, because I only have one copy on me.
Okay.
So 160, an additional 166K out of free cash is because they were able to do a better calculation
That was my
And
understanding, that's
that's
how you.
based on the algorithm, like the right amount went into OPEB, the right amount went to
According to financial
stabilization.
management policy, yes.
Okay.
But I also, I mean, I want to
That's a big
say,
difference. I mean,
Yeah.
that's more than you guys had for capital planning last year.
and I believe you had a lengthy conversation with Carter about that, more so than I just know outside when we were looking at the capital items that there was some areas that we could use for a one-time purchase. I mean, I know you had a discussion with him as well. But that's all I could really.
Just based on that number, you were able to add in a hot box, a car, you know, some of the ankle biter stuff like the mobile radar sign. I mean, that's great.
Yeah, and I believe the mobile radar unit was, that was
It's
more of a
cheap.
select board goal.
It's cheap.
Yeah, and,
I mean, we tried to stay within our recommendation, you know, being fiscally responsible to the TA,
yeah,
to say, hey, this is what I'd like you to spend, and we didn't come back and say, oh, pretty please, it's only 4,000, but we didn't have that flexibility.
yeah, and I believe.
UR represents,
Unranked,
unranked.
so the committee
Okay.
didn't rank that.
they just went to, I mean, I like to see that, at least they went to our list.
Right.
Mhm. And
But I think there was some,
Yeah, like two cars, I mean, the extra Ford 350.
mhm.
Yeah, I think the fingerprint system was is in our plan, but it might not have been up for 2018 or 2019, 2020.
Mhm.
It could be out to a future year.
And if you see
Same
there.
with the cruiser, I think it was out another year.
Mhm. And if you see here under DPW other, various repairs for transfers, that's in regards to it's basically a recommendation that's trying to fulfill the capital planning committee's recommendation for a truck for emergency management. There's an email.
Oh, that's where they're pulling it?
Yeah, there's an email right here and explaining what the plan is. Rich Curtis was involved, the emergency management, because we wanted to fulfill the capital planning committee's recommendation at the same time, because obviously we have the fire chief's former vehicle and we have the DPW's.
Can he tow anything with the ambulance?
I believe that's answered later on in that
Okay.
email, yes. There's some of the other proposals too. That,
Right, so yeah, you can present those here in just a few minutes.
okay.
So where
As long as
are
it can
the,
pull that, I mean, okay. If Rich likes it and it pulls
yep,
the trailer,
yep, I'm good
It's
with that.
gonna look weird. ambulance pulling it. You're gonna think that a lot of people are packed up in
I said to Carter, that was pretty creative.
Yeah, mass casualty.
If Rich Curtis is happy with it, then,
Are they gonna repaint it? Is that part of the 15K?
I believe they're gonna clean them up, they're gonna make them.
Yeah, pull all the
Yeah, that's included.
Stretcher systems,
Mhm.
or at least give it as spares
From what I understand, I
Yeah.
believe that they're gonna take care of all that
to
with
the chief.
the 15,000 right there.
Was a chipper on the list at all?
I believe it was.
Yeah, but again, I think it was out in a future year. But they're having, more and more issues with this one, so,
Yeah, I think it actually finally went,
oh, did it finally go?
Yeah. so.
And then the hot box was one that we had a lot of discussion on, because it has, potential operating budget
Mhm.
savings going forward. So the sooner we invest in it, the sooner we get the benefit of lowered operating cost.
And I did mention that when we were going through that.
And then the security camera thing, they were looking at funding alarm systems out of the operating budget in the buildings that don't have them. But by using this security camera system, they're monitored by the police
Mhm.
department. So, by going with this system, then there's no need to do the traditional alarm systems in the building.
That's a cost-effective strategy.
Yep.
So I believe the
Fingerprints on a grant. Fingerprints coming out of grant.
So there was 11 recommendations from the capital planning committee. Looks like here there's 8, and then plus this emergency management vehicle fulfilled in a different way. It's about 9 recommendations, with the exception of the compressor, which we're looking at using out of that state money. And what was the last one on your list here?
And light and water is
No,
gonna pay
actually-
for the scuba tanks?
Excuse me, I take that back. There's 10 because the town hall front door is included in the operating budget.
Yep.
So it's just coming from
Yep.
a different source.
So, and of the
So in the
project,
switch and Maru stuff, that's probably a horrible word, in the reallocation.
yeah,
The scuba tanks, which were 10 grand in our first priority, light and water's gonna pay for that.
yeah, that's what this document gives us.
F-350, light and water's paying for that,
Yes,
for the DPW.
yes,
The lawn tractor, which is our number 10,
yep,
light and water's paying for most of it.
yes,
They're using 3,500, sorry, 1,500 of free cash
Yep.
towards that. And then the mobile radar unit actually is being paid out of light and water as well.
yes.
So that 166 accounts for a couple extra vehicles, chipper.
Mhm.
That's what we're kind of reviewing tonight. I see,
So-
I can see,
Oh, I have a couple
I can
proposed.
see how he did
Do
it.
you want me to?
Yeah, almost.
Oh, okay.
Right, so this, and the reason we didn't have this 67 available to us at the time we made our original recommendations is because we didn't know what that number was gonna be
Right.
at that time. So we
When do
knew
they
there would be
usually-
something, but we didn't know what.
Okay.
So.
When do
that's
they
why-
normally, I mean, is there a line of communication with them to say, hey, we're in our process, can you give us? Or do they just not typically know those things until
Right,
early
so,
budget season?
yeah, so again, it's early budget season before that all gets, really shaken out. So looking at the list though, of the 11 things we recommended, only one of them didn't get funded, and that's the generator. And that's because there's an
Yep.
alternate source for the generator.
Got it?
Everything else we recommended did get funded. The EMS truck was funded for less.
Yeah, because the source was different.
But again, they have, a way to utilize existing equipment with some repair to satisfy the need. Now, these new things that are coming in tonight, where are those funds coming from?
They're included.
Because like in
they're-
this thing, it doesn't really show that we have any additional funds to
Or you
allocate.
just showing me showing us the source documentation.
Well, the proposals here that I have are actually included in this. Carter wanted.
they
it-
are.
Carter did want it to go to capital planning.
Okay.
Through the process. They're
Okay.
just kind of like late items, if you will.
All right, I
So-
got it. So he's already put them in this budget.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
good. All right, I understand now.
I didn't mean to cause the confusion. We're good?
Yeah, we are good.
Okay. So this is for, as Doug just mentioned, the cameras. This is the proposal for the cameras,
Those are going into,
town hall.
Oh.
I'm not sure if you wanted to,
no.
no, okay. So that's the proposal for the cameras. This one's for,
Who did that research? Where does that come from?
that's Bob Sozak.
Okay.
Bob Sozak reviewed
Got it.
everything. This is the street sign replacement proposal. It's pretty lengthy.
Yeah, so the,
85 grand request,
Yes.
approved for 75?
75. I think the motivation there is to get it started because there's federal regulations that the town of Templeton needs
Mhm.
to follow with signage and the like. So this proposal will at least get us moving towards that. It's not obviously funded to the full because there's only so much that can be funded. We were fortunate enough where
But Bob's good with the plan?
Bob is good with the plan. I think he's pretty happy with the capital planning committee's recommendation and the town administrator's proposed budget because, as you see here, I mean, how many of these items are coming to benefit the,
It's a windfall
Mhm.
based on prior years.
Yes, yep,
so I did talk with Bob and he was happy about that. He's looking forward to fiscal year 20. And
What's the date on this email?
Mm. Must have came in around that time period. So, been around that time period.
Okay.
What's that? What's this?
That's December, this is February.
So it must have been
Yep.
in that range. The other proposal here is for the town hall rear doors. And this is coming out of the operating budget. It was a recommendation right here.
okay, so we're gonna pay this through the operating.
We're in 19 right now, right?
Yes.
Yes.
20's operating budget,
At 20s, yes.
they can handle it?
It can, but there's only 29,000. This is the operating budget for the building and grounds. The recommendation's 29,000. I mean, as you can see, the request was 251, plus or minus. And the capital planning committee made the recommendation for this town hall doors.
This is the building and ground 2020 operating budget request?
Yeah, see, like you'll see some things were moved to capital.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So like the selectman desk, planning of expansion, F-350 with the plow, so.
So they included, that's weird that they,
So usually in the
it's weird to me, they included all the capital items in their operating budget.
Well, the 5,700 will be where they request, like, if let's say a certain department wanted to do something major, they would put in their 5,700 generally.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
at that point, the hope is that they would submit to the capital planning committee, and additionally, so there's a recommendation from capital planning, as well as, well, does this item get, so sometimes you'll see if it's a smaller item, it'll come out of the operating budget, but if it's a larger item.
Yeah, and we don't consider, what is it?
Yeah, below, the bylaw says nothing below 10,000.
Yeah.
We've been historically looking at 5.
Mhm.
Okay. So they're pulling it out of 2020 operating budget for the door.
The door, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the proposal.
$9,500 looks like.
I love it. Name of the company. In and out automatic doors.
And the last item here is the DPW office edition. This was coming out of the operating end as well, for the office interior and the office exterior.
Okay, so it's not really an addition, it's maintenance to the
Yeah, but,
existing building.
correct, but, even, it's coming out of the operating budget. Carter just wanted you to be aware of it, so
Yep.
just put that over here as well.
How much?
Between the 217.5, so it's right here, Mike. These two. I just wanted to bring this because sometimes when you don't see it in the capital like that, you'll say, oh, it wasn't recommended, but in all actuality, you know, some of the items, like,
Well,
as
I
Selectman
mean,
Morrison said, will come.
yeah, I mean, whether we can
Right,
consider it
and
or not, at least there's the communication for it, so I understand what you're saying.
Mhm.
And again, you know, it's the capital projects, regardless of the funding source, is
Mhm.
still a capital project. So it needs to come to the committee regardless of how they're gonna fund it.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so these maintenance items on the highway, building, both the interior and exterior had been put off way too long, and it's starting to show, signs of deterioration if we don't get them taken care of, so that one is, you know, really needs to be done, and that, you know, could be a driving piece of putting it in the operating budget, because it's gotta get done, and if we couldn't fund it through capital, it's still gotta get done.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's unfortunate that the town as a whole has put off, you know, maintenance of, you know, buildings for so long. That we're now in situations where We have to fix it now.
Yeah.
Can't wait any longer.
I think if we keep the balance, that's all right. I'm all right with a balance of operating budget and capital.
Mhm.
I don't want the department heads thinking that they can do everything by operating budget, you know, that they're out there by themselves, or everything, they have to wait for everything to be done by capital.
Mhm.
So I think it's a good balance.
So is that all of the DPW?
That is, though, if we wanna move to, film and wait, Or did
Well,
you wanna-
I'll do the IT next.
okay, you wanna do IT, okay.
Yep, so Carter's asking for 32.5 for IT, capital. It's basically, the DPW has a server. That server has basically failed. They're now storing all of their data on C drives, which are not backed up. There's really no need for a server down there. So we need to correct that situation down there. And the best way to do that is to bring that building on as part of the domain, which is off of the server here. So to do that, we have to have firewalls that can create VPN connections, which we do not have today. So the first part of this is to put in a firewall here at Town Hall and to do a firewall and a wireless system, because they need wireless down there as well, into the DPW building. With that VPN connection, then they will join the domain that's managed here, and will migrate all of their data from their local C drives and whatever's left on that server to the server here, which gets backed
Yep.
up, and is protected. They're, basically will have the same setup as the folks sitting in this building. So the cost to do that is, $11,000. Then we also need to consider the library and the senior center both have similar exposures, but not to the same extent as the DPW. So if we were to put the firewalls in there so that they can make the connection back to here and be able to join the domain, that's roughly another 5 or so. Then the second piece of it is the backup system. So the backup system that we have today is a backup to the cloud. It's basically a data file backup. So if we were to lose a file or something like that, we could restore from that backup. It does not do a server backup. You know, it doesn't back up the operating system, the Active Directory, the group policies, all of that kinds of stuff is not backed up. Which if you were to truly have this server fail, you can't get back up and running unless you have all of that stuff too.
Mhm.
So the proposal is to put in a what's called a disaster recovery backup system, which would back up the server in total as well as the data. So that if in fact the thing crashed, or the building caught on fire or whatever, and we have to put a server on, either a new server here or a new server somewhere else, we can take that back up, restore the entire server, all of the data, and we'd be back where we were prior to the disaster. So the system that's been proposed is $3,000. However, that also has a pretty steep monthly cost of $650 a month for replicating that backup from the appliance here onto the cloud, which is pretty steep for a monthly expense, because that's going to hit the operating budget. So I've gone back to them and asked for alternatives. I think we could create a backup system where we're doing the same disaster recovery backup here, but rather than replicating it to the cloud, we maybe replicate it to, you know, a backup server in the DPW or, you know, at another building.
Mhm.
So now we're not really using the cloud, so we're not renting space on the cloud.
Is that what the $650 a month is cloud storage?
It's,
Or
it's
the
cloud
service to-
storage,
to-
it's cloud storage plus it's the interface with the backup appliance.
So an alternative of a physical server is less money?
So,
Or,
I think it would be more upfront. Is that what you're saying?
right, so what I've gone back and asked them to prepare another proposal. But I believe what we could do is we could have the backup appliance here, we could have a backup appliance at another location. We do the disaster recovery backup with the appliance and then replicate this appliance to that appliance. So now you have to do a restore. If this one got destroyed, you have it over here. You connect this appliance, do your restore, and you're done, back up and running. So we're not really utilizing the cloud to update the appliance. We're using, you know, the building we have here.
Shadow.
So basically, if it's the highway that we choose, that basically becomes our cloud. So I believe the cost to do something like that, now again, we
Still
don't have the
not
quote back from them yet. But I think that's gonna be somewhere in the probably 6,000 range versus the 3.
Mm.
the 3 with a monthly cost?
Correct,
You're saying the 6 has no monthly cost?
correct. That would be my expectation. But again, I've not got the quote back yet.
Mm.
And then the third piece of that is the actual server itself in here. This server is roughly, probably, let's see, it's like 6, maybe 7 years old.
Mm.
So it's at its end of life. It's only running Windows Server 2012, I believe. It's getting tight on disk space. It doesn't really have enough memory to support the town hall and DPW, and if we were to bring out the library, and if we were to bring out the senior center. So we need to replace that. And we have not got the quote for that yet either, so it's been out for some time. But I'm suspecting that
We
the
save
quote,
money by wouldn't we save money by consolidating these things?
right, so that's the idea, is you have one server here.
I mean, the quote, like having one, you know, instead of pricing out all the separate jobs, or are you saying that everything has been,
Right, so the company we've been talking to is this Acuity. So they're a state bid contractor. And that's basically how they do it, is they say, you know, what's the job, you know, or what's the project, and we'll quote that project. So the server replacement is a project. The DPW Town Hall firewalls is a project. If we were to do firewalls at those other locations, that will be a project.
all separate or together?
Again, it's all based on the state contract. So again, whether they do it, we had one quote for, you know, all 6 things, or we have 6 individual quotes, it's gonna be the same.
Okay. So it's not a competitive process?
No,
We're just choosing one of the state-approved vendors?
correct. And we've talked to about 3 different vendors at this point. We like these folks because they work with a number of towns, several that are our size, or, you know, kind of our size, several that are big towns. So they really understand what the requirements for your municipal government are from an IT point of view. They do offer a managed service. Again, you know, another story, an animal that has to be tacked, because again, that's an operating budget thing. So, you know, we have to decide, you know, what road are we gonna go down from that point of view. So, the only thing, you know, with them that I'm not happy with is the backup proposal that they've made. Everything else seems to be, you know, pretty reasonable, pretty fair,
To
which is
bring
why.
our satellite departments in centralizing our,
Right, because what it'll do, by having these firewalls, what it'll do is allow us for these other departments to join the domain.
Yeah.
Once you're part of the domain, now your Active Directory or your domain controller can enforce, you know, policies like the antivirus is going to get updated
Yeah.
at 2 a.m. every day.
Yep, I
We're only
gotcha.
going to apply Windows updates on the 8th of the month at 4 a.m., you know, things like that.
Yep.
Plus it builds, you know, network security so that you can have departmentized folders that only the people in that department have security to. So yes, while all the data is on one server, it is secured to only the people that need to be able to see it. And all of that's accomplished by having these firewalls and being able to make the VPN connection
And who
between the
administers,
buildings.
the permissions for that stuff?
So that's part of the managed service piece that we're still, you know, trying to iron out.
So if Bob Skozik had a folder in this Active Directory, you know, he's got a folder on whatever drive,
Yep.
and he only wants DPW people to be in there. Does he manage that, or does he ask the managed service to do that?
Right, so it would be the managed
The
service.
system
Today,
administrator.
the system administrator. Today, we don't have a contract with anybody, so it's a time and materials. If we have to do something like that, we either hire Montalbano if it's, depending upon what it is, or we might hire Rudder, who did the Office 365 migration. We might be able to hire these people.
Who's our system administrator now?
So, I mean, at this
Holly?
point, it's Holly.
Okay, that was a good guess.
Yep, so,
Guess was accurate.
Okay.
yeah.
People go to Holly.
So that's, you know, that's an area that we still have to, you know, come to a decision on, and how are we gonna be able to fund it in the operating budget?
Okay.
So,
So you got to 32.5.
right, so he's asking for, you know, the 32.5. Could be, you know, I mean, depending upon what the server quote comes in, I'm thinking the server is going to be probably in the 8K range. Might be as much as 10 if you look at migrating data, you know, services, things like that. But I think it's gonna be in that 8 to 10, so that's where we settled on the 32. The 32.5 was to cover, you know, basically the DPW project, town hall firewall, a backup system that's capable of doing a disaster recovery as well as data backups, and replacing the server, the town hall server.
Covering all those components.
Yep. You know, we've gotta start, you know, tightening up the IT infrastructure, because basically we're set up, everybody except town hall now is set up as like a home PC. And there's certain vulnerabilities that are inherent with that kind of setup.
Very well said.
So that's all I have on that.
Thank you for doing all the work you've been doing for the IT. I mean, it's certainly a skill that is much appreciated.
All right, so what does the rec department have?
They have upgrades to Gilman Waite.
Like what?
Upgrades to Gilman Waite.
Upgrades, okay.
Yeah, so there's a couple of quotes here. An email. Scott Dill to John Henshaw. Because of CPC and because this is coming under the section of grants, donations, other. So
Saw that.
this is in that 94,000 in that, one of the categories in that, or items, I should say. Upgrades to Gilman Wade at 52,000.
And 52,
52, yeah, there's more in this email right over here.
okay.
Yeah.
'Cause this says 30 to 35, and then you've got,
Yeah, Scott
7,500 here.
dropped that off, and, cause we got the number from, John Henshaw,
Mm-hmm.
and he had that, so Scott followed up with an email to, John, and
So has, CPA approved the funding of this?
yes.
Yes, okay.
This item literally came in probably 2 or 3 days before the budget got printed, so.
Okay.
Like I said, Carter wanted the capital planning committee to get all these items.
Yep. So again, even though CPC is funding it, it's still a
Cap-
capital item and it needs to come here, so,
That is all I have.
okay.
You already read this email, right, from Rich Curtis? Did you read this one? Did you want to throw these in your folder, Mike?
They're just copies.
Yeah, they're copies.
I have that one.
You have that? You have this one?
Yep, I have that.
No, this is the buildings.
Oh, that one, okay. Sorry.
No, it's okay. They all look kind of, trust me, I'm working.
Hmm.
They all look alike after a while. Just the format of them.
And the way that I look at this process, it's like we got together and we wove a basket, right, that can hold our recommendation. And kind of what we're doing at this point is pulling certain slats out of it to try and or if we were trying to redo this thing, we'd have to like really break it back down. So I think as long as everything makes sense, that the quotes are right, that there's money to fund it, I mean, there's really nothing else I can say except, you know, that the town's getting to do what they want. So, the budget went up to 616 for free cash. Of that, 313,000 was original stuff that we considered.
Yep, okay.
303 was new, meaning it was either something that we didn't consider or something that we did not rank. You know, because it was out years or otherwise, so, you know, people watching at home or otherwise, how did you get to that point?
this meeting was to explain that 303.
Mhm.
Otherwise, the town understands what that 313 is coming from. The only thing outside of that is, like I had, this board had said to the selectmen when we did back in January, the other funds like light and water were unknown, and that takes some of that original 450 burden. And then the CPC funds. So, I mean, I'm pretty clear with it. Anyone, hopefully, that explanation gives anyone watching the meeting, okay, I understand what capital planning's doing, how they're synchronizing with what changes that have occurred.
Right. Right. You know, and then we have now talked about the things that didn't come before us before the budget was put together,
Mm-hmm.
so that we have a understanding of them and why, they're needed.
Communication is key, right?
Mhm. So because these projects didn't come to us before, the budget, we do need to, submit a recommendation of, yes, we agree with funding these, or no, we don't, and why. So I would take a motion.
So moved.
So the motion is to accept the capital, I just want to make sure we're getting the language right. The motion would be to accept the revised recommendation based on new information and new requirements as presented by the town administrator and understood by the selectmen. This has already been presented in a budget, right? So the capital planning, kind of a little bit after the fact, we're voting to approve the amended recommendations for capital planning, capital expenditure,
Yeah,
okay?
okay,
Second.
all right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, excellent. So I did not, get the, minutes from our last 2 or 3 meetings put together yet, so I don't have those for us to vote on. And other than that,
Let me see if I can comment on that or make it easy for us. So, final recommendation meeting was the 23rd. That was the day before the presentation? No, that was the night of.
the night of, yep,
Yep,
okay.
so we met at 6 o'clock. Very easy. I can do the minutes for that.
Okay.
And then send them, so I guess we could meet again to accept minutes.
Yep.
Or how do you wanna do that?
So, yeah, we would need to, just have a quick meeting
Okay.
to do that.
So I have them prepared for that. We had a coordination meeting on the 17th.
Yep.
Again, I have these, I can email out, and we
Okay.
can consider those. I think basically anytime we had a meeting, I had good notes for each of the meetings. I don't
Yeah.
think, the only one I missed was the DPW night.
Right, and I think we already put
Yeah,
those
we have.
together, and
Yep,
probably,
okay.
we've already approved those. I think it's just
So
those last 3
these are very
meetings that we
easy
haven't
for me
done.
to email out.
Yeah.
Wow, take good notes.
So I suppose we could, can we look at them? Could you bring them up
Yeah.
on your machine and we can look at them?
Yep.
And then if we look at them, I think we could go ahead.
So we have it for the
and vote
20th
them.
and prior, so this is the regular meeting of the 8th,
Mhm.
the coordination meeting of the 17th, and then that final recommendation meeting.
Yeah, you have the time when it's called, the members present, highlight of the meeting. I think everything's here.
Yep. Okay, so if we can,
On the right-hand side of the screen, it's the last 3 items. You see that?
yep, okay,
Okay.
on the tabs at the top.
Mhm.
Yep, okay.
You're a lifesaver.
Notebooks are cool, but computers, that gets it done.
Seems to work pretty good, though.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah, I got it, I needed something exactly like this, but I didn't wanna pay the money for a Surface. That's
Mhm.
like $1,000.
Really?
Although I was at a
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft store in Burlington, and they're coming down. You can get it for about $300-400 now.
I like the
There's not a,
keyboard.
there's not a lot of memory in something like this,
It's nice to have that keyboard too.
yeah. And I've had this for.
Instead of typing on that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
that-
had this for 4 years now. Still works pretty well.
Yeah, it looks brand new. So we'll probably just have to read out the meeting dates, right? Before.
Well, yeah, so what we'll do is everyone's good with them,
I already
we'll do
looked
the
at 'em.
motion,
When you pulled
and then
them
I'll
up, I
make a
was-
PDF of them. So if we approve these minutes, I'll make a PDF and then upload them, so they go right to the meeting.
Perfect.
3-phase, we make them, read them, make a motion, I make a PDF, I put them up on the website.
You got it. You're a pro at this.
I've been doing it for a couple of years
Who
now.
takes him on advisor? Tony?
No, Lee.
Oh, Lee does? Okay.
Yeah, but I'm kind of I take notes anyway,
Mhm.
so I wind up sending Lee whatever I have, or if Lee's not there, I've got them so I can do them with Jeff. I got some redundancy.
Mm. 'Cause at the select board meetings, Holly does them.
Mm-hmm. I think on the three meetings that we'll look at, I think I have the times,
You do.
when we started, who was there,
You
what we
have
talked
you have
about in the
military
adjourn.
time.
Yeah, I got that, of course, that hard habit to break.
No, but you have everything that's required.
Mm-hmm. In the format that Doug had been using, yes.
Mhm.
Can look them over.
And were you recording them tonight? Like motions and, I was not taking
Yeah,
any notes.
I did not either. So we started at
So we'll have four motions total. Five for the adjournment. We had the motion to accept the revised,
Mm-hmm.
Capital expenditures.
and that was about 10 minutes ago, so I would say 7:25 on that one. I made the motion, Adam seconded it.
Mhm.
Okay. 5, 8. All right, so, I mean, we can accept all of the minutes.
Okay,
at the
just for
same
one
time in
motion?
One motion,
Okay.
yep.
I make a motion to accept the minutes for the capital planning committee meetings on 8 January, 17 January, and 23 January.
So that was 8,
17 and 23, as written and read by all the committee members tonight.
I'll second that.
That's Mike. and Adam. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody have anything else?
Nope, I'm good.
So we will need to schedule another meeting, a little bit down the road,
Mhm.
After budget season kind of settles
Yes.
down a little bit.
Thank you.
Yep. So that we could talk about, process improvement for next year.
Mhm.
Any ideas that you guys have put together. I know you have some ideas on standardization of
Right.
forms, so.
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah,
thanks for
so we'll,
reminding me of that, yeah.
Probably, this is March now, starting March tomorrow, so probably mid-April, something like that. We'll be out of the heavy part of the budget season by then,
Mhm.
not really geared up for, town meeting yet, so that would be a good time,
Fair enough.
all right? All right, I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved,
Second.
thank you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.